All right. Let's get these windows set up so I can see all of my information and hopefully all of le chat. Dread elves, comfortable in their leave-it homes, sat lazy and easy lives. They do not have the fate of some of their kind. Until their vile god, Corellin Larethian, told them of the hobgoblins, the elves possessed of much anger in their frail forms, took up arms against the goblinoids. They were led by Corellin, but Maglubiet saw him for the coward he was. Corellin was slain, and the elves routed. They now sit in their forests, cowed by the mighty horde of goblinoids. Hail, Maglubiet! Damn Corellin Larethian! There are no creatures as repulsive as hags. Their cunning minds are confounding, and their plans are as far-reaching as they are patient. Maglubiet saw them as a powerful magic to be bent to his will. The hags saw Maglubiet, his power and grace, and sought to use it. They gathered magical might and set to bending Maglubiet's will to their own. Maglubiet saw this work on its course and set the goblinoids upon the hags. Repulsive creatures were sent running beyond the hills, beyond the sands, and into the marsh at the edge of existence. They now sit and lick their wounds, daring never again to attempt such a bald-faced power grab. Hail, Maglubiet! Damn hags and Hecate! The next two entries into the Goblinoid Bible that I wrote, continuing the history of this world and the mythology that binds it all together. And that's where I stopped. I didn't write any more than that. I have ideas for the future, mentioning giants and their role in the world, each of the types of giant and why they specifically are a blight upon the land, and Maglubiet hates them for what they are. Then on to dwarves and constructing their fortresses of stone. And then humans coming into the world with their many gods and faiths, and then standing in front of the terror of the bugbears, the fierceness of the goblins, and the might of the hobgoblins. And so the humans are kind of the end of this mythology. You know, the entrance of them is what really routes the goblins into the edges of society, if there even is such a society. Hello, Zach. Good to see you in the chat. And so it would end with now Maglubiet searches for new allies, fiends from the lowest reaches, and arcane powers beyond conception. And it is likely that around that point is when the player characters would realize kind of the end game of this whole adventure path, which we'll talk about in probably weeks to come after I finish what these players got to. And it ends with the final line: Hail Maglubiet, hail the Conqueror, hail her field on Acheron and our future. So I took a little bit of the lore of orcs, with Grumsh defeating or having his eye taken out by Corell and Lorethian, but instead Magubiet destroys Corell and Lorethian. Because in my opinion, the Goblinoids are a better army in many ways than an orc. An orc is they are Vikings in true. They are homemakers just as much as they are raiders. They are just as proficient at farming and breeding and making lives as they are at raiding and making war. But the Goblinoids, in my opinion, are really something special because you have these three different races brought together, and each of those can bring something different to the party. You've got your bugbears that are stealthy and ambushers and capable of guerrilla warfare, as well as being shock troops and just horrifying to behold. You've got goblins that replicate en masse so fast, and they live such a short amount of time. That they're able to be, the bones of an army. And then you've got the hobgoblins. They're able to guide both of those, and they're able to make them an army, not just a collection of disparate beings. And I think that's the thing with goblinoids versus orcs that really makes them, in my opinion, at least, more interesting. So that's kind of, again, part of that conceit for what made this whole adventure path come to my head. But as I'll talk about in weeks to come, there's even more to it than that. That the end game for this adventure, I think, is something really interesting and plays on those who know more about D&D lore and can be interested to hear things that have changed or choices that I've made. And they go, wait, you did what with a who? But at the same time, new players could also find it fun because it's still an interesting mystery. It's still an interesting conspiracy to take apart and find all the working parts of, if they're interested. And if they don't want to do any of that, it's still a great evil to slay, and you get to go have a good time and, kill some goblinoids, kill some fiends and demons and devils, and good times, good times had by all. So that was the end of the Goblinoid Bible. I probably won't talk about it anymore going forward, but if you remember from last time on Dragon Ball Z, or rather Dungeons and Dragons, the player characters had all come back from their exciting adventures across Blackstone. Urza came from the library, learning about the history of Blackstone and the history of the kings here. Matt came back from the shops and talking with the Honeybrooks. Smalls and Sunshine had come back from the temples and having their little interlude with Olidamara. And they find Takko asleep, but not asleep, passed out, face down in the bed, ass up, naked, except for his cloak of billowing, which is flapping in a non-existent wind above his back. And all of his clothes spread throughout the room. So they come back to that scene, and immediately one of them heads to the guards outside and says, what happened? And one of them wakes him up. He is thoroughly unconscious. I think I either made them use a good berry or some sort of spell or effect or something like that. It wasn't a simple smack. He was passed out from a poison, from a reaction. So they talk to the guards, and the guards say, hey, he came back with 2 women. He gave us 5 gold, saying, hello, Freddie. He gave us 5 gold saying, I'm going to entertain these fine women. And then a little bit later, the women left, and I don't know, he said it was cool. And so they wake him up and they look around and they realize that all of his gold is gone, except for 20. They left 20 gold pieces behind. And I'll explain a little bit more about that later. And they left his clothing. But Takko looks for something very specific. And he passed me a note, I think I passed him a note that says the ring is gone. And he goes, fuck me. And Melee says, okay, guys, we got to find him. We got to find him. They're like, I mean, they took your money and that's bad. Like, I'm down with this, but like, what's the craze? And he's like, we got to find him. They took my money, man. That's not okay. So they search around the city. It's pretty obvious. They find a kind of a whole district of the, the unheartened, the moneyless, the penniless, the crime, all the little things in life that polite society doesn't like as much. And this city being broken into 6 cogs of a wheel. One of them, yes, Zach, it was a ring. Found that one of those districts was basically where all of the bad things in society were kind of pushed, kind of a den of crime. So they look around, they do some persuasion rolls, things like that, kind of find that, if he paid anyone, it would have been around here. He recognizes the shop or the place where he found the women. So he ends up finding these this homeless man on the street who says, hey, I can lead you to where you can find those women, leads them into an alleyway. And I designed this on purpose. In that alleyway, they're immediately ambushed by some bandits. Now, part of that ambush is just to give them a combat. I think that, the yellowpage brought them. Zach in chat reminded me the yellowpages brought them. Yellowpages I'll bring up later. They're a creation of mine. The homeless man brings them to this alley because I think that it's really good to have a combat every so often. We're in a combat centric system. This is Dungeons and Dragons, not World of Darkness. It's good to have some physical, I can beat the crap out of these bandits and nobody cares sort of thing. So they messed them up. Fair, it was meant to be easy. It was base bandits. I don't even think I gave them any special abilities, but like 2 of them were on the roof. That was the only interesting thing about this combat. So then they find the house, the brothel / bar / whatever that these women would have been hired from after threatening the homeless man, accusing him of leading them into a trap. So they find this bar. It's a 2-story kind of establishment. So you've got this whole, first level that is the bar and dancers and obviously women for hire. And then on the second level, there's just a couple doors and that's it. And they notice from the outside that even just this little bit doesn't seem to fit. There is too much space on the outside that beyond those couple doors would have to be a whole 3 or 4 homes. And it just doesn't, like, why would you design it this way? Something seems odd. And so then they go on in. They can see the 2 doors on the top level are closed. There are 2 sort of guard-looking dudes standing outside, and there is a collection of people all wearing incredibly beautiful, well taken care of weapons and armor. And it's, sparkling steel, but obviously used. If they have leather on, it is perfectly grained and taken care of. But again, used. They seem hardened, even though they're having a good time. Anyone with a lick of social sense immediately goes, those guys are bad news. And so they go up to, the 2 guards outside the door and they say, hey, we need to get in there. We need to talk to the head honcho guy. He's got our money. The 2 prostitutes that I took back earlier, they stole my money and he's got it. They had I think either found the two women before this or something like that, and they'd said, "Hey, we handed it off. Hey man, like, your transaction with us was perfectly legitimate, but we got orders. We take all the things we can find of value and we pass it off to Zagrok." And so they head in trying to talk to Zagrok, and the guards are like, "Look, man, he's in an important meeting with the boss, and we don't interrupt that. Look, like that's not a choice here, man. You don't just get to go walk in there like it's nothing, you know." And so they wait a little bit, each finding their own little things to do. Smalls decides to perform, hops on stage and just strings belts it out. Perfect natural 20 on the performance, perfect timing. Just entrances the crowd, gets some money for his troubles. Matt and Sunshine end up talking to these terrifying people about some things that they have in their armor, or maybe one of them talked to Sunshine first and was like, "What do you got going on here, man? Like, that is a weird hodgepodge." And they talk about some interesting inventions and the ability to quick draw weapons via lines attached to your fingers that can pull from right here. So it was just an entertaining little discussion. Matt getting to show his almost artificery ways, wanting to invent ways to fix things, whether or not those things are actually a problem, and Sunshine just being fascinated by talking about any sort of weird topic. So they had a good time there. End up finally getting into talk with Zagrok, and the conversation went interestingly. Basically, he's like, "Hey, look, man, you stole my money. I want it back." Or no, not even that. It was, "Look, okay, it was something to the effect of, you stole my money, but I need the other thing. They took something else. I want it." And so he and Zagrok have a little conversation. They talk about, the city, and and what's going on. And somehow did it come to light then? No, it was later. It was later. So he says, "Okay, look, I'll give it to you." Okay, Zagrok says, "I'll give you back the thing you're looking for, but you have to come back tomorrow at noon and talk with me here, because what that is, I want to know what you're doing with it and what the heck is going on." And that was about it. There wasn't really a whole lot else that happened in the session. It was relatively short, I remember, and a lot of that took more time than it probably needed to. I could have probably rushed things a little bit more. Um, I did write out here, and this is where I want to talk a little bit about my notes, for this session. I wrote out in my notes a little bit about Zagrok, and his personality. That he's kind of a, "Look, I don't need any trouble, man." Like, he's got a billion ways to get coin. He doesn't need something that's going to be trouble or problematic. But at the same time, he's looking for an out. He's looking for a reason to not have to do what he's doing anymore. And maybe Takko can be a way to make that happen. We'll talk in a second about why that's true. But I also wrote out, just what if they decide to ignore the thieves? What if, Takko A, doesn't give a shit, or B, the rest of the group is like, "Hey, man, I don't give a shit. You're the dumbass that brought somebody back here and got yourself robbed," which I wouldn't put entirely past this party. But they didn't. They agreed, and they said, "Hey, let's go find him. You lost something. You lost your money. All this stuff. Hey, let's go find him." And oh no, he did. Never mind. Yeah, he did say here. So, um, is that right? That doesn't sound right. Before. Oh, yeah, I guess. No, yeah. It was next session. Never mind. Yeah. So anywho. So yeah, I wrote out a whole thing. What if they don't go and talk to Zagrok? Well, Urza will probably find out more at the library. Cool, perfect. That's what she was planning on. She'd already kind of said that. Gozar, a cleric in this city, is going to meet the party. He's actually going to introduce himself to them, and he's a great contact for some other things. He can lead them toward the conspiracy in the city of Blackstone and why the king is alone on that throne. They'll have the meeting with the king, and that'll go well. I wrote down some little notes. It's not a lot, but it's something to give me something. I'm pretty good at improving the specific words I want that will make the scene play out the way that I'm looking for. What I write is just quick little notes, just to remind me to make sure that I hit all the bullet points. If there's something important that I need them to say, write it down. If you write it down, you ain't gonna forget. Hopefully, that's a different problem. And then final note was like Takko will likely get into more shenanigans. That's whatever is what it is. And then what they would face if they left the city, and some things that they would face, some interesting situations, and there you go. But that wasn't what happened. They ended up, going after the thieves and trying to find out what was going on there, which was a great little situation because what it led to was the start of one of their secrets. So if you remember way back at the beginning of the series, I talked about our session 0 for this campaign, and I asked each of the players, okay, give me a secret about either you or the town of New Haven, and hand it to me secretly. I will not bring this up to anyone. No one gets to know what your secret is. That's why it's not allowed to be about or mention anyone else. And Takko's was that he is the third son of a duke. He's not next in line to the throne of Kayla or anything like that, but he's pretty close. And he was sent to New Haven just to get out of his father's head. He's not a problem anymore. And so, if enough people down the line die, he would be next in line. And I said, okay, your background is now noble. Your background is now noble. And that means you get the money, you get the signet ring, and you get everything else down the line. And this was the start of that. What was stolen was his signet ring. And I don't know how much the money really bothered Takko's player, but I know that losing that ring did. Because it felt like an actual invasion, and of course, this whole thing could have been avoided. If his constitution save was high enough, he would have had a fun night with some prostitutes. But that's the beauty of this game, and of any tabletop role-playing game, is the ability for something to happen just like that. Because someone made a bad roll, someone messed something up, and suddenly everything's out of whack. And then what it led to is me being able to turn them to other points in this campaign in different ways. One of the touches that happens around Blackstone is the characters change from being adventurers seeking out evil to players on the political stage. Because there is more going on in Blackstone than just evil being out here somewhere. But there is things on the horizon that are going to affect the city, but also will affect the players. and are part of that evil that they were sent to exterminate, to destroy. So this is the point when I start looking, okay, how can I make these characters and these players be interested in that sort of thing? And then the answer is not at all. They're not. They don't want to be. That's fine. You know, that's again the beauty of this game is that each group is different and each player is different. And so where we go from there, who knows? But most groups that I have run for and most groups that I've been involved with want to reach that point when not only are they powerful and well regarded, but their actions matter beyond being their actions and their choices. They reflect a wider world, and how people react to that means something. So, out of curiosity, what would have happened? Matt's secret. Matt's secret was the blood in the stone and his mom out in the forest. Can you confirm that? Because I honestly don't remember. It's been a while. While I'm waiting on Zach to reply in chat, take a drink of this so I can keep going. So this is just, Karen and the cult. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So Matt's secret was that his mother, who was a horrible person, had a cult of some kind that he found out in the Forbidden Forest, to the east of the village, and he saw them sacrificing a young girl or something to that effect, if I remember correctly. So you weren't the only person to make a secret about evil shit in the town. And I've thought for a while now about what makes New Haven special. I mean it to be a basic ass bitch town in the middle between these two metropolises, but is not a waypoint. It is where people stop for a night, but have never built out into anything more. So I've always been wondering, okay, what makes New Haven special and what makes it what it is? And I kind of finally got there, at least for this campaign. And I don't know if this detail will be true in future iterations of Plot of Conquerors, but at least in this iteration, the town of New Haven was going to have been protected, for lack of a better word, by a devil lord. And Karen and her little cult had to appease him, at least to a point. There was another secret that was about the water is actually poisoned, and the only one who knows was the cleric that didn't actually become a character, Charity Hope. I believe the plural of metropolis is metropolises, not metropoli or metropoliodes. But I could be wrong. Who knows? English. But yeah, so we had there was the poison one, there was yours, and there was another secret that was like, oh shit, something about the town elders hiding some dark past, some dark secret, something like that. And I want to say there was something else about the forest too. I want to say, like, literally out of the 5 of them, one was Takko being secretly a noble, and the other 4 were something's fucked up with this town. And so for this version of New Haven, there was going to be that demon lord, devil, not demon, very specifically, for a reason. And probably Levistus or one of those. We'll see. It didn't really matter. Never got that far, But yeah, so all of that was going to kind of culminate. There's a point later on in the campaign where the players are very, very, very likely to return to New Haven and to either choose to build it back up as a town again, or to continue its memorial, or whatever choice they decide to make. But there is a point when they pretty much have to return, because there are secrets there that they need for kind of the fourth act. Blackstone is the ending of the first act in many ways, and the second act deals with a number of god-touched goblinoids. The third act concludes with a lich and some hot nonsense up in the Elven Forest. The fourth act is a demon lord and devil lord, and then the fifth act is just kind of really a quick finale to the campaign. But yeah, so there's a point in that fourth act where you really need to return to New Haven, or at least you're likely to, because there's secrets there, there's information there that people need. So yeah, not a whole lot else to talk about from this week. Like I said, it was a pretty short session, and not a lot happened, mostly because, yes, buddy, I know. Yes, mostly because they were a little too indecisive is one word that I would use, and that just describes this group in many ways. But also just very involved, and that's one of the beautiful things about this group that I had. And hot nonsense is in fact what the kids are calling it these days. Probably not, but because I guarantee neither of us know. But yeah, one last thing I wanted to talk about: the yellow pages. So yellow pages are a creation of mine from way back in the day. I think I was like 11 or 12 when I made these things, and the yellow pages are inspired by the classic yellow pages that you would open, the phone book. For those of us old enough to remember what a phone book is. But the yellow pages are little people. They're a foot and a half, maybe 2 feet tall, so the size of a halfling, or maybe even shorter. And they are little young looking people. Their faces are plump, and you got the big cheeks, and you got the full lips and the small noses and all that stuff. And they are wearing these wide brimmed yellow hats, like a fisherman's hat, and long yellow raincoats with gloves and little boots, and so they look like the Gordon fishermen, from anyone who remembers those old commercials, but with a little child face. And they are creations of the god of transportation and roads. The yellow pages are an interdimensional force. They are everywhere. And huzzah, yellow pages. Thank you, Table Talk. Table Talk was in my first campaign of Plot of Conquerors, and also saw the yellow pages, because they have showed up in every campaign that I have ever run, every world I've ever written, everything I've ever been involved with that is Dungeons and Dragons or fantasy, at least, have the yellow pages in them. And the yellow pages have one job, and that is to show people to what they request. So if you go to a yellow page and say, I'm looking for a shop to enchant this sword with magic, the yellow page will look at you and go, processing, got it, and run off. And they run at exactly the speed that you can move, if you move. You can't just walk with these things and get where you're going. They're going to go, and they don't care if you're following or not. They just go. And the yellow pages are just these little creations, and they just, they do their thing. They're just there, and they're only known in places with enough people, or places with enough magical research to have that sort of data to know what these little impish creatures are. All you have to do to call one is just say yellow page, and poof, one appears right in front of you. and then you say to it, I'm looking for a short elf named Harry, and it will go, processing. Bing, got it, and run. It's a fun little thing. I don't use it for much, but I like it for making metropolises interesting. Most games, in my opinion, do not start in a big city, and most games, in my opinion, need the ability to make these large cities, these huge masses of people, interesting. And the yellow pages are a way of doing that. The yellow pages make the cities something special. They are magical and wondrous and unique. And when someone sees one, usually how I introduce them is you'll just see people. You see people, strangely walking all around the city, and they're following these small yellow clothed, like they look like halflings, but they're a little short. Um and they have on these wide brimmed, like yellow hats, and these big long yellow coats, and everything looks kind of slippery that they're wearing, and they're just running. These little things are running so fast, and people are following behind them, and they're everywhere. They're everywhere. You can't go down a street and not see one of these friggin' things with somebody following behind it. They're great in that way. They're also just great in a gameplay way. Sometimes you need some way for your players to be able to find their way around without having to say, you ask around and you find the way to this thing that you're looking for. Or even more, to make something like a shopping day just relatively easy. Oh, I'm looking for this. Cool. Bam, there you are. I'm looking for this. Cool. Bam, there you are. It doesn't need to be anything more than that, and if you want to make those interactions, cool. Personally, I don't all the time. Sometimes depends. A lot of the stuff with Matt and his trying to buy this very complicated, magical thing. Yeah, that's usually something that I would, make into a whole affair. But yeah, it's an interesting idea. It's something that I've had for almost a decade now, and I really realized that it's a lot of fun. I've used it in almost everything, and I think it's a good time. You know, um, exactly the same thing with the people in the bar. Could I have just had them walk in and talk to Zagrok and continue that scene? Yeah, I could have, but I wanted to introduce a little mystery, a little something strange. Oh, I didn't actually mention what was strange about that. So after when the door opens up, and Zagrok is seen, he walks out with a figure. About 5 foot, maybe 5'2", tall, clad in this gray black cloak that seems to cover their entire body. And that figure walks out and snaps, and all of those guys and gals that are just horrifying in their very good armor gather around, and each of them faces inward towards this figure in the gray black cloak. And the gray black cloak throws off their hood, and you see they're wearing a full face covering composed of leather in that same gray black color. And they snap both fingers, and all of them disappear. A great bit of magic, something not capable by anywhere near the level of spells these players have. And even if they know something like the teleport spell, that's not going to do what you're looking at here. Not 20 or 30 people. And so it is a moment of, whoa, that was weird. That was strange. How did that happen? And, why were they talking with this guy, with Zagrok? And what those people are is another creation of mine, actually, from my first D&D game of ever, which was Unija. Unija is a interdimensional crime syndicate. The first character I ever made, because I was very young, naturally, was an assassin. was a rogue. In 3.5 days, there was a couple of prestige classes you could take, and that game went up to level 42, I believe. It was 42 or 43, I don't remember exactly. And that game was epic. Truly, in every possible interpretation of the word. Not just in the way that epicness functioned in 3.5, but in the way of going beyond the bounds of what a story can tell. And my character in that was called Unijah, and Unijah formed this interdimensional crime syndicate, mostly focused on killing for pay. And so ever since then, I've had Unijah is present in all of my worlds. Again, everything I create, everything I use that is at least even vaguely fantasy has Unijah in it. And they are beyond the strength and magic and power of anything in whatever tiny world they come to. They function far beyond what the mind could comprehend is possible in the world of Plot of Conquerors. There are families in Plot of Conquerors that are incredibly powerful. The Honeybrooks can conjure magic that you couldn't conceive. Unijah is a level beyond that. And I really believe that they're a fun little conspiracy. They're not meant to be anything more. They're not a villain. I occasionally might use them as a red herring. I occasionally might use them as something someone whispers in the shadows. Careful, that's Unijah's house, something like that. But it really is just meant to be this wonder, like, how did they even do that? At higher levels of D&D, I'll have them show up and produce artifacts like their paper, and throw away things that should boggle the mind, as if it's just Tuesday, because to them it is. They produce artifacts like it's I'm talking on paper, a paperweight, and so that was that little interaction, and some of the mystery. I like mysteries, as you can tell by this point. I like something that boggles the mind and makes players go, what? Wait, but what? Who? How? When? Huh? And I think that Unijah does that. So definitely Victor Von Doom. You're not wrong. But yeah. So yeah, that's about it for this week. Next week we'll talk about Zagrok's meeting with Takko privately and some interesting things that occurred beyond the scenes there. And we'll talk about what happens with the rest of the campaign. I think next session was the last session of the game and of this game. So after that, next couple weeks, we'll talk about what the future of Plot of Conquerors was gonna be and will be for later groups. But for this one, this was basically the end. There was one more session. There was a great combat, great little introduction of another mysterious thing, and some fun from there. So if there's nothing else, which I'm not sure that Jamie is here, so he doesn't have any insightful questions for me. So yeah, it's good stuff. Scouting and Matt's toys. Well, yeah, that was discussed next session. Yeah. Because that was really the point when you finally got back and found out. We'll talk about that next week. So tune in next week. In the meantime, my office hours are closed, and that is good night.